Yesterday we were talking about the practice to note every arising object in the body and apply this mindfulness. And in order to cultivate insight, there are supporting mental factors which we have to employ before we start the practice. And we also mentioned that in the course of the practice, there are supporting factors which are associated with the deep mindfulness. This will be explained in keeping with the exposition of Satipatthana, both from the theoretical and practical aspects. As the Buddha has directly mentioned in the discourse on Satipatthana, there are 4 objects of attention, namely kaya, physical or material aggregates, vedana, feeling or sensations, citta, mind or mind objects, and Dhamma, general objects or phenomena, that is all phenomena, all objects except the first 3 things, namely kaya, vedana, citta, physical object, feeling and mind objects. So when they are combined in one thing, it is known as Bhuta, which arises, Bhuta meaning the one which arises obviously as a result of cause and condition, or we may say conditioned things. And also they can be experienced personally with your personal knowledge. So this is known also as Vijamana, things which can be experienced by yourself. In this way, this Buddha is conditioned or experienced, personally experienced objects. So in this way, we can say that instead of 4 objects, there is only one object. When we say kaya, it means that it means aggregate, not just minute particles, but it is an aggregate or a combination of particles. Such is the meaning of kaya. In the body are things such as bones, which you can feel as hardness or heaviness. If it is hard, in most cases it will be heavy. And you can feel the sinews and tissues which are soft. When it is soft, it is more likely that they are light. Such things are known as the element of earth, Paṭavi Dhatu. And in the body are these things which can be felt as hardness. They are very obvious. And another element is known as Abodhatu, water element, or the element of cohesion. You can, there are things like cohesion, solidity, fluidity, like sweat or tears. They may be combined with other elements. And also there are other things such as stiffness, tension, movement. They are all natural phenomena. Of course, cohesion is Abodhatu, and heat and cold are Tejodhatu, the element of temperature, which are all in the body, which can be observed. As for Abodhatu, it cannot be observed, it cannot be felt. In the physical objects or materialities, four elements, essential materialities are most obvious. As out of these four elements, that is earth element, element of water, element of temperature, and earth element, they are, out of these four, the Abho Dhatu, the element of water or element of cohesion, cannot be felt. It is the element of water. Other elements are easily experienced. So this Abho Dhatu, the element of water or cohesion, can only be observed together with, when they occur with other elements. For example, there are things like sweat, tears, which can be, which come out of the skin, and they can be understood or observed together with other elements. In the body, this cohesion, solidity, just not solidity alone, but hard solidity with hardness. So this solidity or cohesion can be felt with hardness or softness. Then it will become obvious. At times you can feel the heat, but the heat also occurs in a solid manner, solid heat or solid gold. So in this way, this solidity, which is the Abho Dhatu, element of water, can be felt together with the element of temperature. So in this way, it can only be observed together with, Abho Dhatu can only be observed together with other elements, such as Paṭavi Dhatu, Tejo Dhatu, or Vayo Dhatu, element of the wind, such as stiffness and so on. In this way, out of these materialities, four essential elements are most obvious. And out of these four elements, four essential elements, the element of wind or distension, Vayo Dhatu, is most obvious. Hence, priority is given to this element in our meditation. When we watch the abdomen and noting rising and falling as we breathe in and out, we observe this Vayo Dhatu, the element of wind, very easily. So too in walking, we can observe elements such as stiffness, tension, and so on. As is given in this aphorism of insight, Vipassana aphorism, Yatha Bhagatam, Vipassana Biniviso. That means one observes, one notes the most obvious thing in the practice of Vipassana. That is the meaning of it. So when we are noting, there are two main elements, namely the material element and the mental element, or material phenomena and mental phenomena. Out of these two kinds, material phenomena are more obvious than the mental phenomena. Hence we give priority to note the material phenomena as our object of attention. So, as we have said, these four elements are most important, and out of these four elements, the element of wind, Vayo Dhatu, is most element, and this should be understood in the beginning. As again, to repeat it, is given by the Vipassana aphorism, Yatha Bhagatam Vipassana Biniviso. We observe the most obvious thing in the practice of Vipassana. So out of these four kinds of objects, namely Kaya, Vedana, Citta Dhamma, we give priority to Kaya, that is material or physical aggregate. In the materialities or physical aggregates, there are individual characteristics like flavor or taste in the food, known as sarasa or sabhava. These two words are different in wording but the same in meaning. In the food are 6 flavors, such as sweet, sour, bitter, hot, and so on. And they are obvious whenever you take food, because you delight by way delight in the tongue, because your tongue delights it. It is known as rasa, flavor. In the daily food are flavors, or each food has its own flavor. So too in the physical objects, they have individual flavors or individual essences or characteristics. Their intrinsic nature is known as natural phenomena. So too in the mentality, in the mind consciousness also, there are these essential things, natural characteristics, such as the mind itself or consciousness itself has the characteristic of knowing. And phassa, that's a Pali word, has the characteristic of feeling contact, contacting or contact, touching. And Vedana has the characteristic of feeling or sensing. So too in the food, there are individual characteristics, individual flavors. And such individual flavors or characteristics are known as Paramattha Dhamma, the realities, real objects, or intrinsic nature. And in every element, such as the Prithvi Dhatu, the earth element, Abo Dhatu, water element, Tejo Dhatu, temperature element, and Vayu Dhatu, wind element, you can feel or you can experience the individual characteristics or individual nature. They are quite obvious, like the taste of flavor when you take food. The food also has individual essences, individual qualities, known as sarasa, given as sasa raso, because it has individual flavor. It is known as sarasa or sabhava, individual essence or individual characteristics or nature. They are also conditioned things. They arise due to cause and condition. They become very obvious as a result of conditioning, being conditioned. And they are known as bhava, or conditioned things. So in the body are these individual characteristics, individual nature. And in the mind body, nama rupa, they have individual characteristics like the flavor in the food. They are also conditioned things, and they are observed as sabhava, or individual characteristics. Of course, when you take food, if you chew the food properly, you are bound to experience the flavor of the food. Otherwise, you will not feel or taste the flavor of that food. If you just swallow it instead of chewing, you may not feel the flavor of the food. So also in the practice of meditation, you note it by activating your mindfulness, like chewing the food, with full mental powers. Then you are bound to realize or observe these natural characteristics or natural phenomena. This sabhava, individual essence or natural characteristics, is also known as dhatu, elements, closed in English as element. It is called element because it bears its own characteristic or character. Hence the name dhatu. It is bearing it, or it is happening in its own way. For example, when you look at a stone or feel a stone, you will feel hardness in the stone. And this hardness is not caused by anybody. It is its own nature, because it is bearing its own nature, own character or characteristic. Hence we call it dhatu, element. And when we feel the mud, you will feel it soft. The mud will be felt as soft. This softness is not caused by anybody. It is its own characteristic. The mud, the softness, it is bearing its own characteristics. Because the element, the pieces of earth are mixed with water, it becomes mud. Hence it bears its own nature or characteristics, and no supreme being is causing it to happen or creating it. It is bearing its own nature. They are also conditioned things. Because they have the nature of hardness, they become hard. Because an object has the nature of softness, you can feel it as soft. And if it is the nature of heat, then you will feel it hot. Hence the name dhatu, element. Now the practice of meditation is to observe these elements or natural phenomena or characteristics. In the body are these dhatu elements which bear their own characters. They are happening. They have the nature of hardness. In the case of hardness, they may have the nature of softness or heat, cold, lightness, solidity, cohesion, stiffness, tension, and so on. Because they are bearing their own characteristics or sabhavas. They are not unconditioned, they are conditioned. And these conditioned characteristics are happening in the body. There are these materialities produced by the mind, or mind-produced materialities. And there are materialities produced by the heat, or heat-produced materialities, or food-produced materialities, that is, things produced by the food, or things caused by the food. So in this way, they are conditioned things, and they bear their own characteristics. As much as these things happen in the physical objects, they also happen in the mental objects. They have their own characteristics, which they're bearing, each bearing its own characteristics. Let us look at the practice. When we watch the abdomen and note rising and falling, we observe these elements. In the case of rising, rising takes place because we breathe in, the air goes in. That's why the abdomen rises. And which causes it? The cause is because you wish to breathe in. And this wishing is your mind. Because you wish to do it, the mind is your cause, and you do that because of your intention or wish, which is the mentality or mind. And as a result of these intentions, you breathe in. Hence it is known as sarasa or sabhava or dhatu element. So too in the falling. The abdomen falls because you breathe out. Why do you breathe out? Because you want to do it. Because if you breathe in for a long time, you will feel uneasy. So you breathe out. You wish to breathe out. And as a result of these intentions, you breathe out. So they are conditioned things. And these conditioned things arise and are not permanent like this. They eventually pass away. They are conditioned things. When we say conditioned things, they are not unconditioned things. Without any cause, they will not happen. And these conditions arise and are not permanent. They are not stationary. They pass away. As much as rising rises and passes away, so also falling rises and passes away. As much as there are these conditioned things in the body, there are also conditioned things in the mind, in the mentality. They arise and pass away. They are not permanent. So these rising and passing away, the nature of rising and passing away concerns all things, all conditioned things. So these paramattha dhammas, the mind, body, realities, have their own characteristics, namely sabhava, that is natural characteristics, sabhava lakkhana, the characteristic of the natural or individual or specific characteristic. And because all of them arise and pass away, they have the same characteristic as to its impermanence. Hence, such nature of impermanence is known as samanya lakkhana, the universal or common characteristic. When conditioned things arise and are not stationary or permanent and pass away, whatever arises and passes away cannot be satisfactory, cannot be pleasurable. Hence they are unsatisfactory, unpleasurable or suffering. Because they vanish and are destroyed, they cannot be satisfactory. Hence the expression dukkha, unsatisfactoriness or suffering. In the body are these conditioned realities, paramattha dhammas, which cannot be prevented from arising. They arise on their own. Without you wishing it to happen, they happen. They are conditioned things. So long as they are conditioned, so long as there is a cause, they are bound to happen, whether they are good or bad. They will just occur. They will just happen. They will not arise on your own, or at your will, or at your atta. All these mind-body objects arise and pass away. As much as they are unsatisfactory, they cannot be self or soul. They cannot be atta. They cannot arise at your will or at your wish. And there is another thing or another quality of these paramattha dhammas, the realities, namely asubha, unpleasantness, ugliness. If a certain thing is impermanent, unsatisfactory and not self, then it cannot be beautiful. It will be ugly. More so if you don't like as a thing, something which you don't like will be considered as more ugly. So in the materialities are these things which are subject to impermanence, unsatisfactory, they are selflessness. And they are also ugly, not beautiful, not pleasant. In this way, there are these 3 or 4 kinds of characteristics, namely anicca, impermanent, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, anatta, non-self, and unpleasantness. In this way, in the physical part of materialities, there are these 4 characteristics, and they are also samanya lakkhana, the common or universal characteristics. As much as there are these materialities have these universal or common characteristics, so too in the mentalities or mental parts, there are these universal or common characteristics. There is another characteristic which is an intermediate characteristic, that is intermediate between the individual characteristic and universal characteristic. And this kind of characteristic is known as sankata lakkhana. There are in the body, every material thing, physical thing in the body has 3 modes, namely arising, genesis you may call it. It comes up, it occurs as a result of cause and condition, then it is stationary but not permanently stationary, then dissolves. So arising, stationary and dissolve. Genesis, then stationary, aging we call it, and dissolution or dissolving. In this way, there are these 3 modes in all these conditioned phenomena. As much as there are these 3 modes in the material things, there are also the 3 modes, that is genesis, arising, aging and dissolving in the mental things. In this way, both the mind and the body have 3 modes called sankata lakkhana. In terms of Abhidhamma, it is known as Ubhada, Titi and Vanga, genesis or arising, aging and dissolving. In the Sabdanta, in the discourse method, it is given as Adi, Meje, Priyosana, that is beginning, middle and the end. All Paramatha Dhammas, the realities, have these 3 modes or time. So we have 3 kinds of characteristics known as sabhava lakkhana, the individual characteristic. Secondly, we have sankata lakkhana, the 3 modes or the characteristic of modes. And lastly, samanya lakkhana, that is universal or common characteristics. Out of these things, it is important for us in our practice of meditation to know or understand the first characteristic, namely sabhava lakkhana. So to put it down to practice, when we are watching the abdomen and noting rising and falling, when we breathe in, that is when the abdomen rises, we feel the stiffness, tension, movement and so on, which are known as the sabhava lakkhana, the individual characteristics. Then we will come to observe the 3 modes of every object, namely the beginning, the middle and the end of rising or falling. Such is known as Sankata Lakkhana. And thirdly, as the objects arise and passes away, we will observe the universal or common characteristics, namely impermanence, the impermanent characteristic, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. Unsatisfactoriness and non-self. Unsatisfactoriness and